Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessie Pardo, and today what I would like to do is share what I like to call my medical testimony. So today's going to be part one of what God has done in my life from a medical perspective. And so for context, I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3, and I was nonverbal until the age of 5. And basically, as a result of what was known as autism, I basically went through life's milestones, pretty much more delayed than everybody else. When it came to life's milestones, they were pretty much delayed for the most part in my life. So I was, as an example, was potty trained at the age of 5, learned how to brush my teeth when I was 8 years old, learned how to take a shower when I was 10, learned how to tie my shoes at age 11, among other things. And so for the most part, I was in special education classes until I was 7 years old, roughly. And then I started transitioning to what they call regular classes, or I think the term is mainstreamed. So I would be with all the other kids. So I was able to do that roughly age 7 or age 8, first grade, second grade, right around. But despite the fact that I was in this new, so-called regular environment where all the other kids were, the other kids could tell that I was different. They can tell that I was slower than the other kids, that I wouldn't laugh at a joke as quickly as other kids, things like that. And they would just bully me and make fun of me from a very early age, you know? So now, as far as my health markers go, pretty much I didn't have any major diseases, physically speaking, normal blood pressure, no diabetes. I grew up going to what they call the pediatrician, and they would check me out, do this, do that, take a little bit of blood, all the things that they normally do at the doctor's office. My parents took me every year. We didn't really talk much about the autism. I tried to kind of keep it on the down low, even from my own practitioners, even from the own doctors. Even I guess my parents told them every time, but I didn't want to talk about it because I just felt so ashamed about the whole situation. I just wanted to fly under the radar, be a normal kid like everybody else. But after the age of 21 or so, I just stopped going. I felt like at the time it was a waste of time. One thing that I didn't like was the doctor's office, or at least the ones that I went to back in Miami. Is like it's very overcrowded. You're waiting for a very long time, sometimes hours. They take a little bit of blood. The doctor only asks you like 3 or 4 questions. It's a very rushed process. It takes about 10 minutes. You're with the doctor 10 minutes to share whatever complaints you have with the doctor. He just tells you, okay, come back in 6 months, do this, do that, and come back in 6 months. And I just felt like in that moment, that was just like a waste of time. And and to be quite frank, in that point of my life, I just felt like, man, I, I don't want to live this super long life. I was in a very low point. So I honestly was not interested in having a long life. I just wasn't motivated to care for my health or anything because I just didn't feel like it. Also, in my 20s, I was participating in a lot of excessive eating, gluttony, to escape my feelings of loneliness. But by the grace of God, I never really gained weight. Thank God. But I wasn't treating my body right. Now I know that, but back then I didn't know that, or maybe I didn't care. I would go out to eat with friends that I had back then. We would eat all kinds of junk food, Oreos, processed meats, chocolate chip cookies, lots of barbecue. Not that any of those things by themselves are like in themselves bad in moderation, but I just did it excessively just to cope with my feelings of loneliness and cope with the things that I was going through back at home. So that's how I coped, because, a lot of people see like drugs and smoking weed and things like that as quote unquote bad things. And they are, in my opinion, but they don't see gluttony as a sin. So I was participating in that, and I later on in life I did repent of that, but that's what I was doing. Yeah, so I was trying to escape from being misunderstood by everyone in my family, escaping thoughts of inadequacy. It just felt like no matter how much I tried to mask my feelings, masking my autism, masking the fact that I was different than everybody else. I was just trying to blend in. I was trying to hide that. But even though I was masking, people could just tell. I don't know what vibe I was giving, but they could just tell. And then even my own friends would pick on me sometimes, and then later say, "Oh, we're just kidding, whatever." But it still hurt at some point. It was still like a wound, a tiny wound. You know, it's what they call death by a thousand cuts. It's a little cut here, a little cut there. Fast forward to 2022, at the age of 37, I had my first ever panic attack, and I was rushed to the emergency room. And by the grace of God, at the time, I had a job at the hospital that I was working at. And so literally my boss walked over with me to the emergency room. So, so at the, so at the time, they just checked my vitals, my blood pressure, all of that, and everything was super elevated. It was super all the way through the roof. And I honestly had no idea why I was so panicked, but they were able to stabilize me. And by the grace of God, I was referred to a doctor that was specialized in adults with autism. That's very hard to find anywhere. A primary care physician that was specialized in adults with autism, which was great because this particular doctor, with the way they handle patient appointments, is instead of a quick 15-minute appointment or whatever to check up on you, they literally sit with you for a whole 45 minutes every time you come to the office, at least 30 to 45 minutes to see what's going on with you, how you've been doing, and all. It's a very, very relaxed, easygoing process, and they really, really took care of me during the time that I was there. And then this doctor also worked closely with a psychiatrist in that same building, and they would be able to see each other's notes in the computer system, so they would be able to provide the clinical care that I needed as a team. So then when I went to the psychiatrist, they prescribed me Lexapro 10 milligrams. So they started with that. And that had kind of like a relaxing numbing for a while. But then it got to the point where I just wasn't feeling anything. I was like not happy, not sad, but just like numb. I just couldn't feel anything. So, and then after a while, I shared with my psychiatrist, hey, you know what, this thing, at least I'm not feeling anxious all the time, but I'm just feeling like a zombie walking around. So then he said, okay, we're going to add Wellbutrin, 300 milligrams to make me, let's just say, get me a little happier, let's say, a little lighter. So that kind of worked for a while, but then I got to the point where I just felt like the core issues that I was struggling with day to day, they were not being addressed, and I just felt there was something missing. Like, okay, I'm with these medications, I feel good, but I know something is wrong. Something is wrong. I didn't know what it was. So then in 2023, I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. And at first, I was trying to find a similar type of doctor that would specialize in autistic adults. I did not find it. I was not able to find that type of care here in Charlotte. And then as a result of like not keeping up with the doctor's appointments back in Miami, and there was some issues with the doctor not being able to prescribe across state lines or some kind of issue. I kind of prayed about the issue, and the Lord led me to stop taking the medications. That's what he told me to do. Now, with that said, disclaimer, very big disclaimer. I don't recommend abruptly quitting medications. I don't recommend you guys do that. That's something that God gave me grace to do, but please do not do that. Please do not do that unless your doctor takes you through a specific withdrawal process. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what the proper term for that is, but they need to kind of lower down your medication slowly so there's no adverse effects. But unfortunately, in my case, I left to Charlotte, and I did not have the ability to like maintain that relationship and all of that. So that's why things played out the way they played out, and God gave me grace. So I wanted to make that very clear. Don't quit your medications all of a sudden. Don't do that. All right. So with that being said, while I searched for the right doctor, I looked at my life. I'm 37 at the time, and I said that I really needed to get serious about my health. Um, and the reason why I got the revelation that I really needed to get serious about my health, not just my mental health, but all parts of my health, was because at one point in time, God did say to me to pause communications with my biological family. I have another video in my channel that explains why I did that. But for the purposes of what we're discussing today, I didn't really know that many people here in Charlotte, only 2 people. So I thought that if I ever really got sick for some reason, no one would really come to my rescue. So I needed to cut out every unhealthy food in my life. I needed to really get serious about my health. I don't want to be that person that gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's or some degenerative disease at the age of 45 or something, or some really early age, or have some really big problem and not have anybody come to my rescue. Because at the time, I was all by myself here in Charlotte, pretty much. So as a result, I really got serious about cutting out, slowly but surely, every junk food, Oreos, Doritos, potato chips, anything that you look at the ingredient label and it has things that you can't pronounce. Basically, I started getting rid of it. It needed to go because if I eat it, it's going to cause problems in my life. And then also, as I went on that journey, I started educating myself about how toxic our food industry is, and also, sadly, how diabolical our healthcare industry is. Here's the thing, guys. What I learned, what God showed me, is the story for many of us goes something like this. So we eat unhealthy foods our whole lives: Doritos, chips, goldfish, crackers, all this stuff from the time we are kids. Okay. All right. And then we get sick, we complain about it, then we go to the doctor. The doctor gives us a pill to manage the problem, whether that's diabetes, high blood pressure, constipation, whatever. There's a pill that's going to manage that symptom. And then more often than not, you're dependent on that pill the rest of your life. That's it. And who gets rich from that system? Big food and big pharma. I hear prescription medications for cancer and for all these other things that cost $30,000 a month. Like, that's absurd. That's ridiculous. Like, how do they get away with this? Like, there needs to be a better way. I started like really digging deep into this, and I thought to myself, bro, in biblical times, people did not have $30,000 a month to buy a prescription medication. But they didn't need it because they didn't have these problems. It's like it's just insane. So this system that we have it right now, we this system does not benefit us as patients, or even the hardworking doctors and nurses. It's not the doctor's fault. This is what they were taught in medical school. A lot of the things. The nurses are trying very hard, working very hard to keep patients alive and stabilize them and all of that. But this system that we have in place, unfortunately, here in the US, benefits big, greedy pharmaceutical companies and big, greedy food companies. And the sad thing about it is, like, even we're now, what, in 2026? Probably you guys walk around grocery stores, and there's a lot more healthier food brands out there that really care about your health and care about quality ingredients. But you know what's happening, guys? And y'all got to check this out. The big food companies are coming in and purchasing these smaller health brands and bringing them into the big corporate umbrella. But it's not like people are getting notified about this. So one example is there's these tortilla chips that I really enjoy called Siete. And these are very yummy tortilla chips made with pretty high quality ingredients, a lot better than Tostitos. Tostitos has a lot of crap in their tortilla chips. But Siete is a little bit cleaner, right? So I'm like, all right, let me eat these chips instead. They're a little bit more expensive too. But it turns out, later I find out that Pepsi bought them now. So now what does Pepsi do? Now Pepsi's gonna go in and add all these other ingredients to their chips. It's like what? It's like y'all. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Siesta chips were fine just the way they are now. You gotta add all the stuff to it. Well, another example of a brand that has sold to big food is there's a brand of pasta called Rayo's. Really, really good pasta brand. They sell a bunch of different sauces and things like that. A whole lot better than Ragu and Prego. And when it comes to the ingredients, so guess what, guys? They were sold to Campbell's, the guys that make the soup. Now, to Campbell's credit and to Rayo's credit, hope this stays true, but Campbell said that they're not going to change the recipe of the Rails products. All right, so I hope that stays true. So you know what, if that stays the case, hey, that's great. Everybody wins. But this whole notion of all these brands, all these big brands buying the health brands, and then messing up the recipe with all these junk ingredients just to increase profits, that is diabolical, guys. What's the point of adding all these ingredients to the foods? Well, so most of the foods these days have lots of chemicals and preservatives, but that's to make the food last longer in the shelf a lot of times. Or worse yet, to make the food more addictive. I was addicted to Cheetos Puffs. They crunch a certain way, the little puffiness to it just the crunch them. And guys, you guys can do the research yourselves. These food companies, they have labs before they release a new food product. They have it in a lab and they test it and they do all kinds of things for like 1 to 2 years before they release a product. They want to make sure the crunch is just right, the taste, how it feels in your mouth. Like they do all these things just to keep you hooked to these foods. So with all that being said, so when I got the revelation back in 2024 that this was happening, I literally said to myself, you know what? I'm going to start reading the ingredient label, every single ingredient label of every food that I buy. I quickly learned that you're not completely safe from toxic ingredients, even in places like Whole Foods Market and Sprouts. Now, good credit to places like Whole Foods and Sprouts for pretty much banning a bunch of ingredients. You're not going to find Pepsi at Whole Foods. You're not going to find Coca-Cola at Whole Foods or Tostitos, but you might find stuff like Siete chips in there that I mentioned earlier. And guys, not only is it important to read the ingredient label, you want to check the ingredient label over and over. Every time you go to the grocery store, every few visits, all right, let me see if they added something. Especially these days, a lot of small food companies are getting bought by the large food companies. One app I personally like is Seed Oil Scout. They are not sponsoring this video, by the way, but I like them a lot because you could scan the product and it'll show you if it has any toxic ingredient, especially seed oils. That, by the way, that's another thing. Even places like Whole Foods and Sprouts, organic places, they're not free from every toxic ingredient. I personally now like to stay away from seed oils. I stick to whenever I cook with either beef tallow, avocado oil, or olive oil. Those are the three that I stick to. And then if I go out, it's a little harder. Most places use seed oils, and that's just part of life. Do I avoid eating out completely? No, but I try to reduce. I try to eat at home whenever I can. If I'm on a pinch and I want to eat out, Chipotle is a great place. They're not sponsoring this video either, by the way, but Chipotle is a great place I like to go to. They do cook in seed oils, but for the most part, everything else is pretty clean in their food. As far as if I want to really go extra clean as far as what I'm eating, I really enjoy sweet green. I know sweet green is not something available in the entire country, but if you have a sweet green where you live nearby, I really highly recommend that you guys try it because their ingredients are all clean ingredients. They do not cook in seed oils. And everything is made from scratch, locally sourced from local farms. Uh, I really enjoy. And then another place is the Naked Farmer. If they have one in your area, please check it out. I highly recommend it. They're not sponsoring the video either, but it's just a place that I really really like. And then also another thing that I learned throughout my journey is I learned about intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting is basically only eating during 8 hour window of the day. You fast, you abstain from food for 16 hours and you only eat during 8 hours. Now, which 8 hours you choose to eat, that's totally up to you. In my personal case, I like to skip breakfast and have sort of early lunch or something around maybe 10, 11 in the morning. Then I'll have my last meal around 6, 7 the latest. And then that's it until the next day. So that's what I like to do. Uh, Now, with that being said, guys, so I noticed a lot of improvement with making these changes. Lots and lots of improvement. I felt a lot of improvement in my life and the quality of my life, less brain fog, less anxiety. But I still at the time this was maybe what 2024, 2025. I feeling that I needed more healing. I think I still felt like I wanted God to do more for my health. I still felt like I wasn't all there yet. So I did something else, but I'm going to tell you guys all about that next time in part two of my testimony. I'm going to share what what specific type of therapy I I started engaging in that pretty much I'm going to say 99% eliminated every symptom of autism that I have. Okay. So I'm gonna talk about that next time. But for now, thank you guys so much for tuning in. My name is Jessie Pardo. If you guys find this valuable, please like and subscribe to this channel so you guys get future updates from this channel and content. Guys, have a blessed rest of your day.